You ever have one of those moments where you're staring at your own life like it's someone else's movie, like you're just watching everything fall apart, and all you can do is sit there with popcorn in your lap? That was me at 19, standing in our dusty barn in Madison, Wisconsin, staring down my dad while he looked at me like I just told him I wanted to join the circus. Except I wasn't running off to be a clown, I was leaving the farm to study artificial intelligence. Computers, he repeated, his voice low but full of disbelief. You're leaving the land your grandfather built, for computers. I'm not leaving the family, Dad. I've got a different path. There's more than one way to grow something. He didn't say anything right away. Just stared at me, like he was trying to burn a hole through my forehead with his eyes. Then he laughed, bitter and sharp, and walked away without another word. That was the last conversation we had before I packed my things and left for UW-Madison. My mom cried when I hugged her goodbye. Not big, loud sobs, just those quiet tears she wiped away quickly, pretending they didn't matter. She slipped a small envelope into my hand as I got into the truck. Just a little something, she said. Inside was $1,000 in cash. I still don't know how she managed to save it. Dad never liked her meddling in money matters. I didn't look back as I drove away. But man, did it feel like I was tearing myself out of the ground I'd grown up in. That first year at school. Brutal. Everyone around me was younger, faster, seemingly smarter. I had never coded a thing in my life before stepping foot on that campus. My first AI class kicked my ass so hard I thought about quitting every single night. But I didn't. I stayed up till 3 a.m. with YouTube tutorials, textbooks with more math than English, and gallons of gas station coffee. I was chasing this idea I couldn't let go of, an AI algorithm that could actually help farmers. Not replace them, not take away their jobs, but help them. Predict soil health, optimize crop rotations, monitor equipment health. My dad always complained about how unpredictable farming had gotten. What if I could fix that? The only person who really understood what I was trying to do was my best friend, Charlie. We met in Intro to Programming, bonded over bad cafeteria food and being broke. He believed in my idea even when I didn't. Dude, he said one night while we were eating leftover pizza on the floor of our shared studio apartment, you're gonna change the world. You just don't know it yet. I laughed at him, but deep down, I needed that. Back home, though. My dad kept the pressure turned up to 11. Every phone call with him felt like a test I was failing. You make any real money yet? Still playing with code, huh? When you're done pretending, the farm's still here. Each jab chipped away at me. I didn't want to admit how much it hurt, how badly I wanted him to just say he was proud of me. But that wasn't Jack Stewart. He was a man of dirt under the nails, early mornings, and calloused hands. He couldn't wrap his head around a son whose success might come from a keyboard instead of a tractor. By my junior year, I had my first working prototype, a stripped-down AI model that could take in real-time sensor data and predict crop yield with 86% accuracy. I was so damn proud of it. I sent the demo video to my dad, hoping he'd see the value. He didn't reply. Not a text. Not a call. Nothing. I spiraled for a while after that. I started skipping meals, pulling 20-hour days in the lab. I was trying to code something revolutionary while silently screaming for my father's approval. I told myself I didn't care what he thought, but I was lying. If it wasn't for Charlie and my mom, I probably would have burned out completely. Mom would send care packages with homemade cookies and little notes like, "I believe in you," even when he doesn't. It helped. More than she knew. By the time I was 22, I'd graduated and turned down a six-figure job at a big tech company to keep working on my AI startup. Everyone thought I was nuts. You don't turn down Google, one professor told me. But I had this vision in my head I couldn't shake. I called the company Verdance, like Verdant plus Advance. Cheesy, I know. But it felt right. Charlie joined me as co-founder. We set up shop in a tiny second-floor office above a bakery. Our desks were 2 folding tables, and our break room was just a mini fridge and a microwave. I was broke, exhausted, and constantly second-guessing myself. But I was finally doing it. For the first time, I wasn't just dreaming, I was building. And then the rejection started. Investors didn't get it. You're too young. Agriculture's not sexy. Come back when you've got traction. Each no hit harder than the last. I kept a spreadsheet of every pitch I gave. 42 in total. All rejected. And every time, my dad would call. Not to check in, no, to remind me of the real world. You still think you're gonna change the world with a laptop, son? That was the line that finally broke me. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the office, staring out the window, watching the bakery close for the night. I was broke. My algorithm was still glitchy. I hadn't paid rent in 2 months. I remember whispering to myself, maybe he was right. But I didn't quit. The next morning, I woke up on the office floor, my hoodie rolled up under my head, back aching like hell. Charlie had brought in coffee, he always did on Mondays, and set it next to my laptop without saying anything. He just gave me a look, the kind that said, I know you're hanging on by a thread, but I've got you. I didn't even thank him. I just sat up, opened my laptop, and got back to work. That became our rhythm: wake, work, get rejected, try again. Most days, I couldn't even tell you what time it was. We stopped going home some nights. Just lived in that damn office like squatters in our own dream. And yet, every failure made me more stubborn. I didn't care if the world didn't see it. I knew this could work. I just had to make it undeniable. We narrowed our focus. Instead of trying to be the AI solution for all of agriculture, we specialized in soybean farmers. Why soybeans? Because Wisconsin had thousands of mid-size farms growing them, and most were struggling. Weather unpredictability, soil degradation, outdated equipment, you name it. They didn't need more data. They needed smart, actionable insights. Real results. Our algorithm, still in alpha, could give that. We hit local expos. Drove hours just to demo our app to 10 skeptical farmers. Got laughed at more times than I can count. You trying to tell me your phone knows more about my crops than I do? One guy barked. No, sir, I said with a smile. But maybe it can help you sleep a little better at night. He didn't sign up. Most didn't. But a few did. And those few, they saw results. That's when things started to shift. A farmer named Dave, a real no-nonsense guy from Baraboo, called me one morning and said, "Your thing saved me 10 grand in fertilizer costs. Just thought you should know." That voicemail? I still have it saved. From there, we gained a few more users. Just enough to put together a case study. We printed out the data, bound it in a cheap report folder, and sent it to every investor we'd pitched before. Most ignored it. But one didn't. A partner at a small VC firm in Chicago named Rafi Sharma called me out of nowhere. Said he liked the hustle. Said he didn't care that I didn't wear a suit or talk like a CEO. I like founders with something to prove, he said. Makes you dangerous in the right way. We met in person the next week. I wore the only blazer I owned. It didn't fit right. I was sweating through my shirt by the time I walked into the cafe. He barely glanced at my pitch deck. Just asked me questions, about the tech, the market, my plan. At one point, he said, "You seem like a guy who's been told no a lot." Yeah, I said. But I only need one yes. He smiled. You just got it. $15 million. That was the number. When I saw the contract, I literally thought it was a typo. Charlie tackled me in the parking lot outside Rafi's office, screaming, "Bro! Bro! You did it!" "No, we did it. But here's the thing, I didn't call my dad. Not even when the money hit our account. Not when TechCrunch featured us. Not when we hired our first full-time engineer or moved into a real office with actual desks. Because I still wasn't ready to hear him say it didn't matter. Instead, I bought a Ferrari. It was dumb. Reckless. The most impractical thing I could have done. But it wasn't about the car, it was about the moment I'd been waiting for since the day I left that barn at 19. The family barbecue. Happens every June, like clockwork. All the Stewarts. Uncles, cousins, neighbors, second cousins you never really talk to. Burgers, beers, and bragging rights. I pulled up to the farmhouse, dust still settling behind the wheels, engine purring like a beast. Everyone turned. I mean everyone. You'd think I'd shown up riding a unicorn. I stepped out in jeans and a plain white tee, sunglasses on, smile locked in place. Charlie came with me, of course. He was grinning like an idiot. "You know this is gonna be awkward as hell, right?" he whispered. "Yup," I said. "Can't wait." My mom was the first to reach me. Her eyes went wide when she saw the car. "Joshua, what is all this?" I just smiled. "Long story, Mom. I'll tell you over a burger." Then I saw him, my dad. Leaning against his old Dodge pickup, arms crossed, chewing on a toothpick. The same look he'd had the day I left. Except now, his eyes were a little older. A little more tired. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. At least not right away. We just stood there, the Ferrari between us like some gleaming, mechanical middle finger. "You finally made your money, huh?" he said at last, not unkindly, but not impressed either. "Yeah," I said. "Guess so." He nodded slowly, then added, "Toys don't mean success, son." I met his gaze and said, "Maybe. But this toy came from an idea you said would never work." He didn't flinch. Just looked at the car, then back at me. "And what exactly are you trying to prove?" I opened my mouth to answer, and realized I didn't know. That night, while everyone else was drinking and laughing and pretending like they'd always believed in me, I sat on the hood of the Ferrari and stared out at the field behind the house. That's when my mom came over and sat beside me. "He's proud," she said quietly. "He just doesn't know how to say it." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because I wasn't sure if I even cared anymore. But I would soon. Because the truth about the farm, the truth about him, was about to come crashing down on both of us. The morning after the barbecue, I woke up on my old twin bed in my childhood room, still covered in faded posters of bands I stopped listening to years ago. I hadn't planned to stay the night, but I'd had one too many beers, and my mom insisted. It felt surreal. The room hadn't changed, but I had. I wasn't that uncertain kid anymore, dreaming about algorithms and being told I was wasting my time. But despite everything I'd built, that house still had a way of shrinking me down. I came downstairs and found my mom at the kitchen table with a stack of papers spread out like a deck of bad luck. She didn't notice me at first, her brow furrowed as she flipped through them, sighing softly. I cleared my throat. She jumped a little. "Oh, Josh, you scared me. What's all this?" I asked, nodding to the stack. She hesitated, then began gathering the papers. "Just bills. Don't worry about it." That was all I needed to hear to know something was very wrong. When my dad walked in, he didn't even look at me. He grabbed a mug, filled it with black coffee, and stepped outside like he always did, staring out at the fields as if they held the answers he couldn't find in the house. After breakfast, I cornered my mom in the hallway. "Is something going on with the farm?" She paused for a moment too long. "Josh, it's not your concern." It is as if you're sorting through overdue bills first thing in the morning. She sighed, lowering her voice. Your father wouldn't want me to tell you this, but yes. Things are tight. Really tight. We've had a few bad seasons, equipment's aging, and he refused to take the tech grant the state offered last year. Said it was charity. That sounded like him. Pride was his currency, and lately, it wasn't buying much. My stomach turned. All the years he spent lecturing me about real work, about how tech was just a distraction, and here he was, running a farm on fumes. Later that day, I went for a walk out by the southern fields, where the soybean rows were sparser than I remembered. I found him there, standing by the old tractor, staring at the cracked soil like it had betrayed him. Dad, I said, we need to talk. He didn't turn around. What about? The farm. That got his attention. He turned, face lined with worry and stubbornness. I know you're struggling, I said. Mom didn't say much, but it was enough. His jaw clenched. She had no right. No, she didn't. But I'm glad she did. I stepped closer. You don't have to do this alone, Dad. I can help. He laughed, sharp and bitter. With what? Another gadget? A drone? You think a screen's gonna fix 30 years of land problems? No, I said, keeping my voice calm. But data might. Precision agriculture. Predictive analytics. I've built something that can help people like you. I don't need your charity, Joshua. It's not charity, I snapped. It's a partnership. He narrowed his eyes. You think just because you made some money, you can come back here and play savior? This isn't about playing anything, I said. This is about keeping the land in our family. About making sure your grandkids still have something to stand on someday. He looked at me for a long time, and for the first time in years, I saw something crack in his expression. Not anger. Not disappointment. Fear. Do you know how it feels, he said quietly, to watch everything you've built start to slip through your fingers? To know the soil you gave your life to doesn't love you back the same anymore. That hit harder than I expected. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't say anything. Just stood there with him as the wind rustled through the dying stalks. The next day, I called Charlie. I want to expand Verdance, I told him. Start a pilot program. We'll pick 10 farms, including my dad's. Give them access to our tools, sensors, analytics, everything. Free. Let's prove it works at scale. You sure he'll let us? I'm not. But I've got to try. So we did. We packed up sensors, drones, rugged tablets, all tailored for ease of use. Designed for folks who didn't grow up with smartphones in their pockets. And we brought them to my dad's barn. He didn't say a word when we showed up. Just watched silently as we unpacked. Let's run this for a season, I told him. 1 season. If it doesn't work, I'll walk away. No pressure. No strings. He didn't respond that day. But the next morning, I found him in the field, setting up the first moisture sensor, awkwardly, but with effort. It was a start. If someone had told me a year earlier that my dad and I would be installing data nodes side by side in a soybean field, I'd have laughed them out of the room. But there we were, me in muddy boots and a hoodie, him in his old Carhartt jacket, grumbling about this thingamajig as we bolted a weather sensor onto the edge of the irrigation system. Push it a little higher, I said, pointing. He looked at me. Boy, I've been farming since before you were born. I don't need a tutorial. Yeah. I smirked. And I've been coding since before this farm started bleeding money. Let's call it even. For a second, I thought he might snap back. But then, to my total shock, he actually smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him crack anything close to amusement in weeks. That was how it started, not with a truce, not with a heartfelt apology, but with shared frustration and the slow realization that maybe, just maybe, we needed each other more than either of us was willing to admit. The first few weeks of the pilot were rough. He didn't trust the sensors, constantly second-guessed the automated irrigation system, and kept a notebook where he jotted down his manual backups for everything we were automating. Charlie called it analog micromanaging. But I let him do it. I knew this wasn't just about data, it was about control. About a man used to feeling the dirt between his fingers, now being told to trust a bunch of numbers on a screen. Still, slowly, he started coming around. The AI predicted an early pest bloom 3 days before it hit. We adjusted spray timing and avoided a full-blown infestation. That alone saved hundreds. Then came the water savings, nearly 20% less usage, just by letting the system decide irrigation timing based on moisture readings and historical weather patterns. The field didn't just survive, it thrived. By midsummer, my dad wasn't rolling his eyes at the dashboards anymore. He was checking them before breakfast. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and found him scrolling through the Verdant's tablet like it was a seed catalog. "This says Field 2's got a nitrogen deficiency," he muttered, half to himself. "That tracks. The corn there's been lighter green since June." I poured my coffee and grinned. "Looks like the thingamajig's working." He grunted. That was the closest I'd get to a compliment, for now. But it wasn't all progress. There were still moments where the old tension bubbled up. One evening, we were walking the property together, something we hadn't done in years. The sunset cast a warm orange over the fields, and for a while, we were just quiet. Then he said, "You know, when you left for school, I didn't think you were coming back." I looked at him. I didn't think I was either. He nodded slowly. "You had all that ambition. All those dreams. I figured this place wouldn't mean anything to you after a while." "It means everything to me," I said. "I just didn't know how to make it fit into the future I wanted." He stopped walking, looked out at the rows of crops swaying in the breeze. "I didn't know how to let go of the way things were." "Still don't." We stood there a moment. No fireworks. No dramatic music. Just the kind of quiet that says, "I hear you." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something. As harvest approached, results started speaking louder than both of us. Yields were up 18% over last year. Costs were down. Efficiency through the roof. The other farms in the pilot? They saw similar results. And suddenly, Verdant's wasn't just a passion project, it was proof. Word got around. By the end of the season, we had 40 more farms on a waiting list. Investors started calling us this time. Even a couple of agriculture magazines wanted to run features. But the part that hit hardest? At the county fair that October, my dad brought a printed dashboard report from Verdant's to the farming co-op meeting. Held it up like it was gospel. "This thing helped us turn the worst soil on the property into one of our best yielding fields," he said to a room full of guys who had spent years doubting anything without a carburetor. I wasn't even in the room when it happened. I only found out because my cousin recorded it and sent me the video with the caption, "Uncle Jack's gone full techie. The end is nigh." I watched it 5 times. And yeah, I teared up. I finally called him that night, unsure how to say what I needed to say. He answered on the second ring. "Hey," I said. "Heard you gave a pretty good sales pitch." He chuckled. "Don't let it go to your head." We didn't say much else. But he didn't hang up either. That silence. It meant everything. By the start of the next season, Verdant's was no longer just a startup. It was a movement. We'd grown from 10 test farms to nearly 100 across the Midwest. Some were just dipping their toes in, installing a few sensors, running reports. Others, like my dad, had gone all in. We even landed a partnership with an equipment manufacturer to integrate our system directly into new tractors and planters. But none of it felt quite as satisfying as watching my dad walk into the barn one morning wearing a Verdens-branded cap. "I like the fit," he said with a shrug. "Keeps the sun out of my eyes." Charlie nearly choked on his coffee. There was still friction sometimes. He was never going to be the guy who posted to LinkedIn or talked to reporters, but something had shifted. We weren't father and son stuck in opposite worlds anymore. We were co-builders of something bigger than either of us could have done alone. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments, about costs, methods, legacy. But they stopped feeling like wars. They became part of the process. One day, we were standing out by the south field, same place we'd had so many tense conversations, and he asked, "What's next for Verdens?" I told him we were expanding into drone-assisted crop diagnostics. Real-time imaging, pest detection, early blight warnings. He nodded slowly, taking it in. "You ever think about turning this place into a model site?" he asked. I blinked. "What do you mean?" He looked out at the rows of soybeans and corn like he was seeing them for the first time in years. "Show people what it looks like when old ways and new ones work together. Not just in theory. In real dirt." It took me a second to respond. "You're serious?" He looked at me and said, "I've seen what you built. I fought it for too long. Maybe it's time I help build it, too." That was the moment I stopped chasing his approval, because I finally realized I had it. We spent the next few months turning the farm into what we started calling our living lab. We invited farmers, researchers, even skeptical policy makers to visit. Walk the land. See the tech in action. Meet the man who once swore he'd never trust a screen to do a farmer's job, and now couldn't start his day without one. The media loved it. Farm of the future, they called it. But to me, it wasn't about buzzwords or press. It was about standing in the kitchen with my dad, reviewing sensor data like we used to review weather forecasts. It was about hearing him say things like, "You know, that nitrogen alert saved our butts last week." It was about seeing my mom smile like she hadn't in years, watching the two of us work side by side. And yeah, it was about driving the Ferrari down the county road and watching neighbors wave instead of scowl. But the car. It started to mean something else. It wasn't a trophy anymore. It was a reminder of the journey. Of every sleepless night, every rejection, every moment I almost gave up. Of how I'd once used it to prove I made it, but now, I didn't need to prove anything. One morning, I tossed my keys to my dad. "You ever driven one of these?" I asked. He laughed. "Hell no. Wanna try?" He hesitated. "Might break it." "That's the fun part." He slid into the seat, adjusted the mirror like he'd done it 1,000 times, and took off down the gravel driveway, dust flying in his rearview. I watched him disappear over the hill, laughing to myself. If that wasn't progress, I didn't know what was. They say success is climbing to the top of a mountain. But no one tells you how it feels to stand up there and realize it's more meaningful when you didn't climb alone. Verdens is still growing. We're expanding to new states, building new tools, exploring climate-resistant modeling. But none of it means more than seeing my father, Jack Stewart, walk into our office one morning with 2 cups of coffee and a list of ideas for the next planting season. Not his ideas. Not mine. Ours. Success, it turns out, isn't just about money, or headlines, or even proving people wrong. Sometimes, it's about building a bridge between generations. Sometimes, it's about planting seeds you may never see fully grow. And sometimes, success looks a lot like watching your old man drive your Ferrari down a dirt road, finally letting himself smile.